Hello, welcome back to today's video. I'm going to do a bit of a longer range look ahead today, having a look at the rest of June and going off into July as well. It's high pressure all the way, really, for the next week to 10 days, and there's no sign of a breakdown of it on the generic charts, GFS and the ECMWF yet. So we're going to have a look at some long range ones to see whether there's any signs of breakdown to the high pressure coming through. Of course, very occasionally you can get summers that have high pressure going on right way through. Famously, 1976 did that. Was a very hot and dry summer. 1995 also. These are very exceptional summers though, and more often than not the high pressure at some point will break down and give you a cooler, more unsettled phase. But we're going to have to wait and see what the long range models are showing on that. We'll have a look at them in a moment. Before I get on with the long range update, I just want to talk about the advertising this video ads. I paid you at GazWeathers.com, and if you hit play on the video ad, you'll be supporting GazWeathers.com. Thanks very much for doing that. So this is the GFS from this morning. This is for tomorrow. High pressure really dominating the weather. There is a bit of a trough in the flow, so there could be some showers across England and Wales tomorrow, but big picture is that high pressure is in control. And if we go out to 10 days away, which takes us to Monday the 23rd, there's very little change in the position of that high pressure. Actually, it's still just to the west of the country, still dominating at 1,030 millibars. If going further ahead than that, this takes us to Friday the 27th of June, which is 348 hours away, a very long way out, but the idea is still really there with the GFS that high pressure is in control, though it's being nibbled at from the south and southwest by these areas of low pressure. It could be bringing in some thundery shower, but the big picture really is that high pressure dominating for much of the coming for much of the month that we're in and the coming couple of weeks. If you have a look at the ECMWF, this is as far as we can go with the ECMWF. This is to Monday the 23rd of June, and yeah, it's still the same idea. The high pressure is there, still very dominant. No sign of a quick breakout out of that. So certainly for the next 10 days, week to 10 days, I explained this in the video yesterday, next week to 10 days, definitely going to be high pressure dominated. Doesn't mean it's going to be completely dry on all days. There will be some variations to the pattern, but the big picture is that high pressure is in control, and that probably extends out even beyond that. So let's have a look at some longer range models to see whether they're predicting any signs of an end to this breakdown. I'm going to start off with this high pressure. I'm going to start off with the Japanese model. It's JMA Friday. Every Friday we have a look at the longer range update from the Japanese. This is broken down into weekly periods. It's 500 millibar heights. Deals with the next month, coming month. The first weekly period will be taking us from the 12th to the 19th of June, and the first thing, of course, to explain is that we're upside down, as I always have to tell you. We're just there on these charts. Orange extrapolated to above average heights, which is high pressure. Blue extrapolated to below average heights, which is low pressure. And, well, yeah, you can see what's going on there for the coming week, the 12th to the 19th. High pressure is very dominant here across the British Isles, just centred maybe slightly to the west, but really high pressure is very much in control through this coming weekly period. I think that's a pretty good representation of the weather that we've got coming up, or the pressure pattern that we've got coming up in the coming week. Now, as we get through to the next week period, quite interestingly, this takes us from the 19th to the 26th of June. And then the Japanese is seeing a big change, because we lose the above average heights and we've got below average heights here sitting across the country. That's an area of low pressure. The high pressure, the above average heights, looks as though it's declining to the south and the southwest. So there still is some sort of influence from high pressure, particularly on the south of the country. But it's a more unsettled pattern. It's probably a transitional period through this week, I would suggest. If the JMA is right, and that's the big caveat, of course, this will be the transitional week, the 19th to 26th, gradually turning more unsettled from the north and the northwest, with driest weather in the south and southeast. But I have to say that there's no sign really of this on the GFS model or the ECMWF really, which is going into at least the middle part of this period. There's no sign of this breakdown yet on the generic chart. So then as we go through to the final 2 weekly period, which takes us from the 26th of June to the 10th of July, again, below average heights here, more or less over the top of the country. The above average heights sitting down to the south and the southwest, just there, although it's actually near normal heights, but it's higher than it is over us, if you get the idea. But low pressure anyway is dominating through this final 2-weekly period at the end of June and into the start of July. So that's a much more unsettled sort of idea from the Japanese model. Once we get this week out of the way, it is seeing a clear breakdown to this high pressure pattern as we go through to the end of June and into the start of July. But there's no real sign of this on the generic chart, which is what I'm a little bit confused at, because I would have thought if the breakdown was going to start occurring from the week from the 19th to the 26th, we would be seeing some sort of signs, some evidence of it on the long range GFS in particular, but there's no real sign of it coming through on those charts just yet. What can happen when you get these areas of high pressure dominating is that the models struggle to see the breakdown, so just keep it going, and then eventually when the breakdown does come along, it happens quite suddenly. The models just latch onto it at around a week to 10 days away, never really seeing it in the far extended range, and that's when you start getting the breakdown coming through. But it's interesting that the JMA is seeing this breakdown, but the GFS and even the ECMWF not really seeing much signs of it just yet. Let's have a look at the Beijing Climate Center. These are 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods, into 10-day periods, sorry. The first 10-day period will be taking us from the 11th to the 20th of June, and again through this 10-day period we've got high pressure dominating above average heights here, indicated by these orange colours, out to the west of the country. Yeah, it's a basically settled, fine 10-day period coming up. But look what happens when we get through to the next 10-day period, which takes us from the 23rd to the 30th of June. Big change around. Below average heights coming through during that 10-day period turns much more unsettled. That's a proper trough of low pressure coming in. Of course, it's a very important period because we've got Glastonbury. I'll be starting the updates for that based on the GFS model at the weekend, probably tomorrow evening. Also got Wimbledon. There'll be lots of cricket matches going on. Of course, events such as Fates, Summer Fates, things like that. So it's always an important period, late June, early July. Always lots going on, and that's a pretty grim anomaly for the final 10 days of June. Low pressure properly in control. But again, I have to emphasise, we are not seeing any signs of this being picked up on yet by the generic GFS and EMWF models. As we go through towards the first 10 days of July, well, you can see what's going on. Below average heights again dominating, so it's a very unsettled phase during the start of July. Yeah, real low pressure fest. And we can go even further ahead than that, would you be with these charts. We can go right through to the 10-day period from the 11th to the 20th of July, and the idea is still there really, that below average heights are continuing. They're shifting a little bit more to the south. We're getting some sort of area of high pressure going on to the north, or above average heights setting up around Iceland. They're a particularly good position to have an area of above average heights, because we'll be bringing in northeasterly winds probably with that. And it is unsettled down to the south of the country particularly. There will be some heavy rain coming through at times. There's also the CFS model, of course, so we'll just have a quick look at that. These are the precipitation forecast, the rainfall forecast from the CFS model from the website weatherweb.net. You can find the link to weatherweb.net on my links page. These are broken down into weekly periods. This first rainfall precipitation anomaly is taking us to the week ending the 19th of June, and you can see it's the week that we've got coming up. You can see that high pressure is going to be really dominant through this coming weekly period. Generally it's a much drier now period. A few showers coming through at time, but generally it is a dry period on the way for the coming week. Going through to the next weekly period, which takes us to the week ending the 26th of June. Yep, it's same idea, high dry generally across the country. So this is sort of in line actually. The CFS is in line with the ECMWF and the GFS in not seeing a breakdown coming through in the next week or two at least. As we go through to the next week period, which is the week ending the 3rd of July, then we start to see things beginning to break. So we start to get some heavy showers, perhaps even some thunderstorms coming up into the south of the country. We've got risk of heavy rain moving into the south. It still is quite dry to the north, but definitely the high pressure is being nibbled away at by low pressure beginning to move up from the south. And then as we go through to the next week period, which is the week ending the 10th of July, well, then you can see what's happened with Bra bringing rain through across the country. So this is seeing a breakdown happening somewhere right at the very end of June and into the start of July, as opposed to earlier in the month. And that is the scenario that we've got with Japanese and the Beijing. The CFS is sitting right at the very end of June. But there we go. By the time we get through to the start of July, the weekend in the 10th of July, we're firmly seeing above average rainfall there across many parts of the country. We can go out further than that into week ending the 17th of July, and yeah, it's a wetter than average week. Some heavy rain coming through at times there. The jet stream really coming back in with a vengeance. Will be a much cooler, much wetter phase of weather coming through. The week ending the 24th of July, still above average rainfall there. So a very different July coming up compared to June. If the CFS is right, it's much more unsettled. I have to emphasise these charts change daily at weatherweb.net. It's just the very latest run of the CFS model, but it is an indication that July is going to be a very different month. The weekend of the 31st of July, as far out as we're going to go. And yeah, it's a proper rain fest still going on with heavy rain across many parts of the country. So the CFS is seeing the change happening. Let's say it happens right at the very end of June. It's sometime, you can't look at it daily, but it's sometime within that period, right at the very end of June into the start of July. When it happens, it really does break down, and we go through to a very unsettled month in July. Whereas the JMA and the Beijing Climate Centre are seeing the breakdown happening earlier, sometime in the third week of the month. But I have to say, there's no sign of it happening in the third week of the month on the generic GFS and ECMWF. That's not saying happily, but I would suspect this breakdown, if it does come through, is going to be right at the end of June probably, or maybe not right at the end, but maybe somewhere in the final week of the month. Anyway, sometime between, say, the 24th and the 31st. But I think the JMA, the Japanese, and the Beijing Climate Centre probably a bit progressive in this breakdown. Of course, it won't break down. As I said at the start of the video, some years these areas of high pressure that setting during June will go on throughout the whole of the summer, and it never really breaks down. We keep high pressure going throughout the summer. They're very unusual, exceptional summers, always very hot summers, always very dry summers, but they do happen on occasion, and we can't entirely rule out that that isn't where this summer's going. But my suspicion is that we probably will see this breakdown coming through during the final week of the month. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, how this all develops. All very speculative. These longer range models in particular are very experimental, so it's just for fun really. Don't take it too seriously. But that's where I think things are shaping up. A lot of high pressure through much of the rest of June, but a breakdown will come during the final week. That's what I'm expecting, but we'll see whether that is in fact what occurs. That's all for now. Hope you found the video interesting. We'll be doing the weekend forecast tomorrow. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.